depletes from this world and no longer exists, your existence as a trans person is not even here. You, in order to be trans, you need this synthetic estrogen, and you need to metabolize.
That's disingenuous.
No, it's not.
It is disingenuous because you know that trans women don't take estrogen after the age of 50, just like regular women don't have estrogen, right?
But ordinary women do take estrogen after the age of 50.
Yeah, but it's not necessary for excuse me, it's not necessary.
It is necessary.
It's like a change of life. It's a change of life. That's what I'm saying. It's like if someone is had the orchiectomy or had the sex change with the reproductive organs, like they don't necessarily have to be on estrogen to be feminine or like be feminine enough to be accepted in society as a woman.
Again.
What are you talking about?
Can we let Audrey?
Yeah, I don't understand what that has to do with it. The point is that if that isn't something. You could just interrupt me even though I've only just come up on the panel. So I'm going to continue what I was saying, if you can be quiet. I am not talking about you, I am talking about women. It is necessary for many women to take estrogen after the age of 50. It prevents them from having osteoporosis.
I know this.
1 in 3 women who break a hip as a result of osteoporosis will unalive as a consequence. So it isn't some kind of feminine hormone to make us look more feminine. It is actually a necessary treatment.
No, I understand this. My grandmother actually just broke her pelvis 2 weeks ago. And she's not on HRT, and she has, I don't know if she's been diagnosed, but I think she has, a bone density thing. But still, like, that's the change of life. Like, women don't really produce much estrogen after the age of 50. So it's like, Envyy, you said, like, that's what our entire existence is relying on. That's just not true.
No, but hold on. Envy's point is that males don't produce it ever, right? So if we went to the Stone Age... We
do produce it through the adrenal glands.
Okay, the same as every other male, right? What I'm saying to you is that what Envyy was saying to you is that if we were to go back, as an example, to the Stone Age or a pre-medical era, right, an era where this kind of administration of exogenous hormones or whatever the appropriate term is not available, then the number of the trans experience would change drastically, right?
Well, I think you had eunuchs that lived as women back then as well.
No.
They didn't live as women.
Eunuchs never lived as women. Never. They were always understood.
There's always been trans women.
Sorry. No, hold on.
No, there hasn't.
Eunuchs are castrated men. They have always been understood to be castrated men. A penisless man is not a woman. Okay? Like, just to be clear, a penisless man is not a woman. Is that? Do you understand that?
Can I?
Sorry, go on.
I just need to get tricky. Can I get your age?
24.
And do you believe that trans women are women?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, you do? Okay, right. Sorry, Audrey, continue. And then B, if you would like to respond to Audrey, and then Trippy, you can have your say.
Yeah, so being transgender, that is a culturally bound syndrome that is unique to our point in time and our place in the world. There have been many different kinds of gender nonconformity throughout the whole of time in every society, but they are no more transgender than you are Farfafine. These are like socially constructed, culturally bound roles. You can't just move to them to a different point in time and say, oh, that's being trans, because it isn't. This understanding you have of trans is unique to our culture now. It's not even the same as the understanding we had of trans 20 years ago.
That's the thing about cultures. Like, cultures progress over time as an average, and this is an example of progression. No,
they don't necessarily progress. Some deteriorate, some collapse, some progress.
I mean, when you zoom out...
Some progress for a while and then go backwards. So not everything that happens is progress.
Well, I mean, when you zoom out, the average is progress, and transgenderism is a progression of society.
Is it? Most societies that have ever existed have collapsed. So
I'm
no,
talking about
when
the
you
human
zoom out,
race.
it isn't a
Yeah, the
progression.
human race.
Why
talking about
would
the human race.
why would something that has only just happened in our society
Yeah.
within the last 100 years, and which you're only judging from being in our society, necessarily be a progression?
Oh, like I said, we've had eunuchs for thousands of years, and some of them lived as women.
That has got nothing to do with being trans.
I mean, they were the OG trans.
No, you're just, that's just cultural
What do you
imperialism.
mean?
It's just cultural imperialism. You're taking something
Cultural
that is
imperialism.
from, yeah, because you're taking something from a completely different culture and you're imposing your own cultural views and ideas onto that other culture
No,
and
ma'am.
making out, yes, that's exactly what you're doing. Because you are trying to make out that this totally different experience is in some way the situation that you were in. Largely, eunuchs were made eunuchs against their will. It is not in any way similar to being trans now, and they weren't given exogenous hormones. So it will have had a huge impact on their health and life
Hold on.
expectancy.
You know that there's always existed certain herbal, like for example, soy increases estrogen production within the body. There's always been herbals that.
Right.
that
So
kind of-
have you got the evidence that these eunuchs were given these
Well, I'm just
plants in
kept
high
letting you
enough
know.
proportion?
Do you have the evidence that trans people didn't exist back then also?
Yeah, I don't have to do. Yeah, well, because it's a thing that only exists now. There's
Hold on,
the whole
let me
point
break it
is
down for you. Let me
can't
break it
prove a
down for you.
negative.
Forget
You're
the trans.
making a claim that
Forget the
something
trans part.
existed.
Are you saying?
To show the evidence of it.
Hold on. Are you?
So
saying
where's the
that-
evidence that it didn't exist?
Are you saying that in the
Right.
Roman? Hold on. Are you saying that in the Roman Empire there weren't men that lived as women and women that lived as men?
Yeah.
No, there were men.
Are there-
No, hold on. There were men that took on the social roles of women.
Yeah, and that's fine. I agree.
That doesn't
Were
mean
there though, Envy? Because
Yeah,
the
like,
only
for
example
example,
we're
hold
ever
on.
given is that emperor.
Yeah,
Even
no.
and that's not an example.
Islamically, there were effeminate men, right? And what they would do, they would stay in the cities with the women. Then Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, when he was going through the city with these effeminate men being in the same houses as women and doing the things that the women were doing, he heard one of them make a sexual comment to one of the women. And then what he did, he rounded all of them up and he exiled them out of the city, basically saying effeminate men are no different from any other man. So this
That
had
wasn't
happened-
in the Roman Empire though,
No.
was it?
No.
Right. So
Oh,
we
you
don't.
definitely
where's
had that
the,
in the Roman Empire.
Right. Well,
The Roman
what is-
Empire was.
Can you give
so-
us the example of this then, please?
Well, I'd have to tab out and do that. But
Right. Well, then go and do it because you're making a claim and now you're not giving us the evidence.
Okay, hold on. You trippy, I'm gonna hand over the baton to you.
1 minute.
Yeah, so I can go back to Trippy and say, no, you can't, but you can't ask someone to prove a negative. Right?
But
If you
you're
are
asking us
making
to
a
prove stuff.
claim, no, if you are making a claim that something happened, you need to provide the evidence of it. Otherwise, we get
So-
into
and
the whole
also,
thing of
vice versa,
there's a
if you're making
giant
a claim-
teapot circling the moon, right? You have to provide the evidence.
Right, like you
I
just
can't
said.
provide the evidence it's not. That's how a debate works.
Right, Paul,
Can I
you were
speak?
right about that. I think I was. Sorry, Trippy.
Says here, while the concept of
I don't
trans.
think he exiled him out.
Oh,
Yeah. He just
I
basically,
have proof.
he just basically said that they're not allowed in women's spaces.
Oh,
I have.
all right, well, my bad.
I just want to read this. So
No,
while
can
the
you give us your source? We need a source. We
Yeah.
don't need something read. We need the source. So what's your source?
you can look at Wikipedia. You can look at this. This is an AI
No, what
overview.
are you? Right, okay, an AI overview isn't a source. You need
I mean,
to
it is. They
actually...
have
No,
links.
it isn't.
There's like half a
Right,
dozen
so
links.
you
right
need to follow the link and then give us the source from the link you followed.
Okay, english-heritage.org.uk. Look up, it says the Gali, Breaking Roman Gender Norms, English Heritage.
Sorry, can you repeat that? The what in Roman gender norms?
It's called the Gali, THE space GALLI, Breaking Roman Gender Norms dash English Heritage. From www.english-heritage.org.uk.
Also, while she's looking that up to verify, I just want to point out that men getting castrated back in the day, it was a form of punishment because they had done something wrong. Like fallaciously, they've done something.
Right. Can I just straight away? It says they may have been devoted specifically to her consort Attis, who had castrated himself in a fit of divine frenzy. So they are referred to as men.
Yeah, it says all the way through this article that they were men and that they identified as men. So what are you talking about?
But they lived as women.
No, they didn't. They just called
they
women
did, Audrey.
They did not claim to be women. Hey, read it. It doesn't say that at all. They were priests, not priestesses, which existed in Rome. They were priests. They identified as men.
That's what I'm saying. There's evidence of gender non-conforming individuals.
Right, but we didn't ask that.
Gender non-conforming doesn't mean trans. Again, this is what you guys do. You reinforce it, and you're the ones putting everybody into a box.
Okay, but you could also say that trans people are sex non-conforming because we're changing our gender.
Well, trans people are gender non-conforming.
Yeah, it's the same.
I'll go back to my claim, which I made in opposition to you. Trans people are a culturally bound syndrome which only exists in our culture recently. Okay?
No.
As opposed to gender non-conformity, which has existed in every culture through all of time.
Okay,
that is my original claim, which you contested, and now you're reversing it.
Hold on. I didn't contest it. The medicalization of trans people is 100-year-old thing. I mean, so is antibiotics. So is all the every other thing that we have in medicine. I mean, I don't understand how you.
No, your notion of what a trans person is. This thing about having this innate sense of self and this thing to do with secondary sex characteristics and all of this, that is something that exists right now in our culture. That's not what the Gali was saying. So all you're doing is cultural imperialism.
No, ma'am.
Taking your understanding of gender right now and trying to put that as an anachronism onto a totally different group of people
because the truth
who were expressing something about being men in a particular way by being in this cult.
That's
right?
the thing. You've had people that have lived as the opposite sex for thousands of years.
They didn't live as the opposite sex. Do you have a reading comprehension issue?
No,
because
I think
am going
you do.
from the source that you have given me where it says that they were men. And
hold on, I have it right here.
I have a question.
It says they wore feminine clothing, sometimes referred to themselves as women, and often castrated themselves as part of their initiation into the cult.
That's not what it's saying in the source that you have given me.
Excuse me.
So I can only go from your source that you've given me.
Affirming the fact that it's a cult. So thanks for that.
Right.
Excuse me. Right, Trippy, you had a question, sorry.
Yes. So I noticed that whenever I usually see these lives, it's just trans women. So I wanted to ask Base, are you also threatened by trans men?
Threatened?
Put me up on the big screen.
Can we just hold on? Let Paul answer the question and I'll put you up, yeah?
I love that coming from a man who's caping for men in dresses. I'm not threatened by anybody, trans men or trans women. I do find it interesting, however, that someone like yourself thinks that trans men are a gotcha moment for me. I actually think that it's much more problematic.
That was a gotcha moment. That was a genuine question.
One second. I appreciate that. So I'm personally pro-patriarchy in a specific context, right? You, I'm assuming, would be anti-patriarchy. You think it to be the origin of all evil and oppression, and it should be something that should be dismantled. Am I correct in saying that?
No.
So you agree with the patriarchy?
To a certain extent, yes.
Could you just clarify which extent you agree with it?
Well, that could be a lot of things that go into that category specifically.
Do you believe that the patriarchy was oppressive to women?
Yes.
Okay, so as a result of that, I think being a trans man is problematic because what it allows people to do is trans themselves, identify themselves in and out of oppression. And what we're doing when we say that a trans man is a man, we're acknowledging all the stereotypes that men have built in the social construct that was very, very well informed by the patriarchy and its standards, to then celebrate these women becoming men by adopting the behaviors of the men that actually put the patriarchy together. So I think it's actually a really problematic thing to do.
Yes, totally. Lesbian.
Because you're judged by the very people who made that system?
No, because you're actually affirming the system that you acknowledge yourselves as being oppressive to women and are moving into the oppressors category by virtue of making a proclamation.
So you're saying that you as a straight man, you're oppressed due to the...
No, I don't think you understood a single word I said. What I said was there are women who are able to identify as men. Those are trans men, according to you, right?
Right,
men.
so you're saying women are
Those
oppressed.
trans men,
So if a woman can change to a man and then she's no longer
and not only is she no longer oppressed, she is now also the oppressor, right? So we are taking the stereotypes associated with men that was informed by the patriarchy, patriarchal standards, and using that to measure or gauge this trans man's assimilation into manhood or manhood. And those things are patriarchal, and therefore you're actually celebrating the patriarchy.
So in other words, they cheated the system and you don't like it.
It's not about they cheated the system. What that means basically is that there are no oppressors and no oppression.
So why have people had to fight for their rights?
Well, I mean,
not just trans people, by the way.
No, I actually understand that, right? Because I live in reality. I don't believe that your rights are based on some kind of like spiritual claim, right? I believe that there are male humans and female humans. I recognize that male humans have oppressed female humans throughout history, and so female humans have challenged those males to fight for their rights.
Right, so would you guys feel different about trans people if they just didn't say that they were a woman and they said, I'm a trans woman? Would that change anything?
No, oh, sorry, don't push.
Well, no, go on, Envyy.
Yeah, no, I think the term trans woman is very problematic because it categorizes men into the category of woman. This is how we've ended up with the term cis. So now woman has become some type of...
Cis has been around, though.
No, cis has been around, I completely agree, but in the realm of chemistry, which applies to isotopes and atoms, it was then taken out of the realm of chemistry and made applicable to gender by the likes of John Money, Volkmar Sagesh, and Albert Kinsey. And then in 1990, it was then changed from cissexual to cisgender by Dana Foster or something like that, which has now created a separation between gender and sex, as if gender is something that you can opt in and out of.
Okay, so what about transatlantic, transcontinental, transnational?
Hold on one second. So let's get down to the bottom of it. Let's get down to the nitty-gritty. So,
sorry, go on, Trippy.
So I can see the problem is that women don't like the fact that they consider themselves women because then they feel undervalued. So, but you also don't like the fact that they were to call themselves trans women. So what would you like them to call themselves?
Men. It used to be transsexual, didn't it? You could call yourselves transsexual. That would make sense.
So, do you have a problem with the trans women that still consider themselves men?
No, I've
Bro,
got an issue.
if they consider themselves men, they're men,
Could you say that again, please?
right? Like the point, right? So if they can look, the appropriation of women's spaces, language, and aesthetics is the problem. You understand what appropriation is? I'm sure, right?
Absolutely.
I find it extremely offensive that a man thinks he can invert his penis and somehow become a part of my category and thinks he can live his life as I live mine. I
don't think they necessarily think that, though. I think it's just something that you guys think and you push onto them. Have you ever had a trans woman tell you that before?
Well,
or are you just, it's your own emotions of how you feel about it?
It's not even about my own emotions, right? Every other biological category cannot be identified into. When we have somebody who is white that wants to identify into the category of black, society would frown upon that, right? Because you do not understand the struggles of a black person. Therefore, you have a man to imply in any capacity that he understands any type of womanhood that we have gone through is as same, as disrespectful.
Okay, so that brings me back to what Bache just said, to kind of counter what you just said. When he mentioned them going from woman to male, they then become the oppressor. So if they transfer over, doesn't that mean they also take on everything that comes with that? So if women are oppressed and you transition from a man to a woman, you are then oppressed like a woman, right?
No.
As long as you look like one, right?
No.
Let me explain. Let me explain quickly, right? Like maybe it's better if you actually try to.
I'm listening. That's what I'm saying.
Arguments.
Like the two things that both of you guys have said just contradicted themselves.
Yeah, because Baste was saying that to show how ridiculous it was, not because he actually believes it's possible to transition to the other sex.
Right, and on top of that, the oppression, the power dynamic is as a result of physicality. Now, in your worldview, right, you have no problem people identifying in a
because it doesn't affect my life.
In reality, yeah, I know. So whatever. You don't have a problem with the appropriation of women's language, the appropriation of their aesthetic. You don't have appropriation with the colonization of their spaces. You have no problem with that. I agree. Right, but you probably kick up a big stink about race. I don't know, right? But the point that I'm trying to make.
Did you say that because I was black?
Actual oppression.
Because if you wanted to know, I don't. Hair is hair. You can wear whatever you want. Okay, you can come up with something else. Let's not make this about race.
Yeah, let's not go. I'll just use it.
It's not about it being race. It's not about it being race. It's not about it being race. You know what? It's not about it being race. It's primarily about what you're advocating for, right? And typically, when people who advocate for trans women and are also of a particular color, they tend to hold the hair dynamic, the this dynamic, the that dynamic. It's a discussion I've had on TikTok multiple times, right? But the point that I'm making to you is that the actual power dynamic is based on physicality, right? The one who can impregnate against someone's will and one who can be impregnated against their will, right? That's where it fundamentally boils down to. Now, if we're saying that the oppressor can identify as the oppressed, right? Even though the fundamentals don't change because the male sex does not change, the female sex does not change, then you have a problem, right?
But what if you transition and you just so happen to be one of those ones to where you can't even tell?
But
they would still suffer the same consequences, right? Right. It doesn't change who you are, but when people see you, they're not seeing your balls or they're not seeing. You know what I mean? They're seeing your face. So if you look like a man, you're going to be treated like a man. If you look like a woman, you're going to be treated like a woman.
No, Trippy. This should be inequality 101, right?
Okay, so you said no. So a woman that just so happens to look like a man.
Or are you just? This is an example, you see, because you're just.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Audrey.
Right?
I'm sorry, Audrey.
I'm on my good account.
Right. Okay. Inequality is structural, right? It exists in things like the female data gap. That data is not collected on us, so our healthcare isn't understood as well, and therefore we will have poorer healthcare outcomes in the same circumstances. That's never going to happen with trans women because they're not female, so it won't have an impact on them. The maternal mortality rate, it will. never have an impact on trans women because a woman isn't just someone looking at you and going, I'm going to treat you this way. It's to do with the fact that women and girls are in the society. If you are not actually a woman or a girl, you will never feel the full impact on that, because a lot of the way that women are disadvantaged is through their biology, which they don't share with trans women. If society treated women more equally and took their biology into account and actually built a society that understood those differences and incorporated fully ways of including women, that structural inequality wouldn't exist. So trans women can never share in that because they don't have that biology that's being discriminated against.